Welcome back to Following Noadon, a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 45, and we have finished Words of Radiance. We are through book 2 of the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. We are talking all the way from chapters 81 through to the epilogue. We're going to be focusing this week's episode on chapters 81 through 84. Next week we will be doing the same format, but chapters 85 through to the epilogue. So for more extreme end of the book conversations, come back for next week. But for this week, do have read the entire book because we're not going to avoid spoilers for the whole book. That being said, Paul, how are you after finishing Words of Radiance?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm feeling really good. That was that energy did not do it justice. This book, the ending was very amazing. I know how to emotionally cope with it. So yeah, it was really great. Having a good week. Ready to talk about this.
Awesome. And Eliot, how are you?
I'm not sure how I'm going to make it through these episodes because I was left pretty speechless after this last segment. I mean, the big hits, just like the big reveals, just kept coming and coming and coming. It is just like, wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, what? Like, eyes could not get any wider kind of stuff.
Yep. When you get to this part in the book, you are 2,000 some pages into this story, and you're invested at this point. You know, like you've come this far, and so these reveals actually mean something to people who get here. So there's plenty of reveals to be had, and we'll get there in due time. Eliot, do you have 2 words to summarize specifically chapters 81 through 84 of Words of Radiance?
Yeah, there's no way that I could do it. The whole section here with 2 words do it justice, but I did particularly love one little section. So I'll pick 2 words that we can talk about for that section. And so my 2 words for this are kept running.
Kept running. I know what that's about, but I'll ask you here in a second. And Paul, do you have 2 words to summarize this episode?
How dare you ask for only 2 words for this episode, Trevor?
It's tradition. I have to, but I completely understand that there's no way you could do that.
Exactly. I'll be honest. I do not have 2 words for you right now. I could come up with words externally from the story. It would just be my emotions throughout. I'm very impressed with these chapters. How well stuff would happen. I'm like, oh, that's crazy, and then something else would happen. I'm like, oh, that's crazier. And it just kept going, and I really had no time to breathe.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second, but let's use Eliot's 2 words and talk about this episode. All right, Eliot. Kept running. I think we all know what this refers to, but you can go ahead and explain yourself a little bit.
Yeah, this one's pretty obvious. No secret hidden meaning here. I'll be honest, when Wit first told the story of Fleet to Kaladin, I was kind of left like, what? Why is that important? Why is that like cool story, bro? What's up with that? But I love the way it now played into Kaladin's story. I loved the moment where Kaladin gets it. He finally gets it and says, Fleet kept running. And just that whole kind of metaphor of pushing yourself to do what's right, to do what needs to be done, even if you know you can't make it, even if you know you're going to die, even if you're giving every last thing you have, you still keep running. And that is so inspirational and awesome. And I loved that moment for Kaladin. I think that actual quote's in chapter 82. I'll have to read it when we get there.
I think we'll be doing a lot of reading in this episode and next week's episode combined.
Yep.
There's quite a few one-liners in these next several chapters. Okay, Paul, I'm going to throw it over to you. And we're kind of jumping a little bit ahead, but we gotta acknowledge this before we talk about boring stuff in chapter 81. You always had faith that Syl was coming back, and in the way that she did that fulfill your expectations? Were you happy about it? How was that reveal for you?
I think it was a really great reveal. I definitely didn't see it coming. I was fairly confident. I want to say I was 70% sure Syl would come back at some point, especially when put in the situation. I was like, okay, Kaladin's not just gonna casually die right now. And stuff like the only way out of this is Syl comes back or something. And the way she comes back with as the Shard Blade, I think I'm really curious to hear what Eliot has to say, because there's always kind of been the mystery about Shard Blades and Spren, and are they not? How are they correlated? Stuff like that. And I feel like we got a lot of clarity on that, which was kind of neat. But just the emotional moment there where she comes back and then all of a sudden Kaladin can heal his wounds, suck in Stormlight, do all his lashings, was really incredible. And the fact he now has a Shard Blade, just incredible. I had a little emotional tear roll down my face while reading it. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Well, while listening to it, I should say. It was great. Long story short, I really liked that. And I thought that was going to be the biggest reveal. And there was just many, many things after that, which was kind of why I was speechless, because that was a great reveal. And I was like, whoa, this is the Sanderlanche. that's it.
Right.
We found it. And then there was many more. But yes, I'm very glad Syl is back. I didn't see it coming that way, but very happy with how it happened.
Eliot?
I very much wasn't sure what was going to happen there, but the way it went down was everything I hoped it would be and more. I mean, that was right along the lines of, I think, what I talked about before, of what I desperately hoped was going to happen is what happened, and in such an awesome way as well. And it feels so good to have Syl back. I agree with Paul. If you felt like she was coming back, I wasn't doubting, but at the same time, I didn't realize how much we had missed Syl until she was back, and I was like, okay, this feels like Stormlight Archives again. We've got Syl. It's okay.
Yeah.
And also, just another little comment about it, the way she came back and how it kind of I could picture it very well in a movie or show sense. It kind of cuts to her and she's like, let me go back. I imagine talking to it's Honor, right? Or the Stormfather.
The Stormfather.
Yes. And I could just see it very I could depict the moment very vividly. And whenever she forms as a Shard Blade in his hand, it was just super, super cool. Incredible.
Yeah. That's a little just teaser for what is happening at the end of this episode. Now we got to back up and let's talk about chapter 81, which is a full-fledged strategic battle between the Alethi and the Parshendi, or Voidbringers, as Dalinar coins them towards the beginning of this chapter. They've set up on this. The Alethi armies have set up on this central plateau, and the Parshendi come out of Narok, and all their eyes start glowing red, and they start chanting this song. And at first, Dalinar was going to do like a siege. He was going to do a very slow strategic battle here and play more defensive and that type of thing. But R'Laine, as soon as he hears the music, says you have to stop that song. Like nothing else matters. You have to go stop them. And so after Dalinar's already sent the orders to do a slow siege, do a slow battle, he sends another message immediately that says, abandon everything I just said and go attack. Doesn't matter like what you have to do that. Go stop that song. Which they don't succeed, but that's okay. It's interesting to see the 3 different high princes and their motivations going into this battle. Eliot, you have this on the outline. Did you want to talk about Dalinar and how he pushes and motivates each of the 3 high princes in different ways?
Yes, I did want to talk about this because he does exactly that. He takes a different tactic, a very intentional tactic with each one of the high princes, and I thought it was really cool. He, the one who's kind of doubting and fearing, he challenges him. It's like, no, we're gonna stand up and we're gonna fight today. But then he turns to like Sabariel, and Sabariel's like, "What inspirational speech do you have for me?" And Donald's like, "Nope, none. You're gonna go sit in that tent and don't mess things up."
Yep.
Which is exactly what Sabariel needed to hear. Sabariel just needed someone to tell and, be like, all right, yeah, we're all going to die. It's cool. I'm going to go sit in that tent, just he told everyone what they needed to hear in that moment, which was really good.
He had a very classic like Aragorn in front of the Black Gate speech for Aladar, but he also had he had a different speech for Roion, and he came down to Roion's level and talked him out of his fear, out of his like panic that he was having. But Aladar needed to hear the facts. Aladar's asking Dalinar, "Did you know this was going to happen as we came out here?" And Dalinar says, "Yes. And you and I have the opportunity to stop Voidbringers from coming back to Roshar, and we are going to fight this, even if we're going to lose." And that's what motivates Aladar. And then he talks to Roion and says, overcome your fear. That's your worst enemy right now, is your fear, your cowardice. He doesn't use that word, but that's essentially the message. And then, yes, he talks to Sabariel and says, "I'm glad you brought your men. You're not going to be any use, so go sit over there. I'll let my shard bearers lead your men, so you can go have a picnic or whatever you need to do."
Yep. It was a very good pre-battle inspiration there, both for the high princes and then the speech he gives to the entire army as well. I thought was really good. I particularly love the line towards the end of it. I won't read. I won't read. I really want to read the whole thing, but we probably shouldn't in the interest of time. For this one, there's other things we need to read. But I particularly love towards the end of it where he says, "Men, we will see miracles today. Fight, stand up. We are going to see things no man has ever seen," and that's exactly what they all see. This is a day of reckoning.
Yeah. Taking this from Dalinar's perspective, the morning before, Shallan shows him light weaving, and Dalinar is 100% on board. He's brought his army out here on based on his visions, based on everything that's in his own mind, but he finally sees something that is external from him, that is proof to him that the Knights Radiant are returning, and so he's 100% on board. And that's where that speech comes from, is if we do what we're supposed to, we will be saved, and I know this is the right thing to do, so we're going to do it. So that's where that speech is coming from.
And then we cut over to Kaladin, who is searching for truth, having a little bit of a identity crisis moment, and he seeks out I can never remember this name. Zyle.
Zyle.
Yep.
Zyle.
You got
And I loved this image of Kaladin finds him, right? It's raining. The storm it's not full on storm, but it's raining. They're in the middle of the storm. Where's Zyle? Oh, he's just in a hammock, strung up between two lightning rods in the
Yep.
middle of the storm. Like, what an image.
I love Zyle. He's, like you said, he's strung up in a hammock, which I didn't remember until this read, and I was like, wait, really? That's really weird. He's on top of, like, you know where Renarin's climbing up to the roof of the arena and of the training grounds and throwing himself off. He's up there and just getting some time to himself away from the other Ardens, and he's just chilling in a hammock in the middle of the rain. And Zyle has some very interesting words for Kaladin, some very not helpful ones as well. But he mentions that constant rain without Krem reminds him of home. Did either of you catch that? He said that constant rain and without Krem reminds him of home, and it's. Wait, no, does he talk about the Pure Lake? I don't remember. I don't remember the quote anymore.
I go ahead, Paul.
I was gonna say I think you were right, and he says that, and it's like an allusion to the Pure Lake, or that's what my guess was. But yeah, I didn't fully know what to do with it. And yeah, I'm not 100% certain that that's correct either. But as far as I can remember, I think that's what was said there.
I think the way he references it is he says that the Pure Lake reminds him of home,
right?
And that the little mini Pure Lake they've created to wash the sand in the training arena is, of course, kind of similar to the Pure Lake. So that brings up the Pure Lake. He says it reminds him of home, but I noticed that he didn't say this little lake reminds me of my home, the Pure Lake.
Right.
He said the Pure Lake reminds me of home, which, if you pause for a second, it's like, well, hang on a second then. Where's home? If the Pure Lake reminds him of home, that kind of sort of implies that, like, of all the places on Roshar that remind me of home the most, it's the Pure Lake. And those are my words, not his, but that's kind of the way I read it.
And therefore his home wouldn't be on Roshar.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And so that was the note I came out of that passage was, well, hold on a second. Are you not from Roshar? We already kind of maybe got some hints that he's a little different than everybody else. So it's not a shock, but little hint there maybe.
He certainly has some Hoid vibes, especially in this scene. He's kind of just chilling off by himself, and he says some random motivational line, and then our heroes go on with their lives and apply it.
He almost strikes me as like the inverse of Hoid or something. Like, seems to be like a great fighter himself, right? And we don't know anything about Hoid and fighting, but he's like a battle of the wit type of guy, right? His name's Wit.
Politician.
Yeah, and Zyle seems like he's not much of a talker. Even here, like the things he says, I get the vibe that he's like, he'll like say something that's very inspirational and very helpful, but it's very like, do it lets you sleep at night, like very like short, concise, almost like an I don't care, like leave me alone, in a sense. And I feel like Hoid is very much like we've seen enough to know that Hoid is extremely like pushy with like talking and riddles and all this stuff and everything. And
Hoid goes out of his way. Hoid goes out of his way for the show. He's definitely there for the presentation of his story to Kaladin. And Zyle, if Kaladin's going to come to him, yeah, he'll talk to him and he'll say whatever he needs to hear so that he'll leave him alone. But you're right but between the two of them, they're both giving advice, but one of them is definitely willing to give it better than the other.
Zyle's like the grizzled old veteran, the grumpy old man that if you can get past the outer layer, he's got just as much wisdom as the the wit does, but you got to kind of drag it out of him a little bit. There's another nugget in this little section. Paul, you probably didn't catch it because I only noticed it because I was reading it and it was in front of me. In this conversation, Kaladin asks Zyle, "Do you know where the king's wit is?" His response back is interesting. Zyle says, "That fool, Dust? Not here, blessedly. Why?" Dust is capitalized, almost like it's the name, almost like that's the name he's referring to wit as. And the conversation just continues on, like Kaladin didn't even notice or whatever, but I think we might have another name for wit right there.
That's exciting. So, what do we think it means? I have two initial guesses. First of all, also, I did not pick that up from the audiobook. So, I'm very glad you pointed that out. I could see it meaning a few things, like he's just old as the dust. I also think of Dust Bringer. That's what sticks out to me the most. I don't know if he's like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, a dust bringer or like
Yeah, I'm
I don't
not sure
know,
what to make of
has
it.
the dust bringer honor blade or something. I don't know. We know he's like definitely fishy, but um
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it either. And I would not have caught it either if it hadn't been capitalized. The fact that I saw it capitalized made me think, wait, is that a name? So, yeah.
what do you think, Trevor?
Uh,
No thoughts.
no
Only
thoughts, only Stormlight.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't give you anything there. Sorry. I thought about it. I really did, but I'm like, eh.
Okay.
I will say you don't have to wait too long to find out.
That's nice to know actually. Thanks. Um yeah, so once Kaladin goes and talks to Zyle, he kind of has this whole premonition of, well, he's trying to figure out what he can do to or to right his wrongs, um, and that was kind of a big question we had. Also, like we've seen how he's killed Syl or like gotten rid of her, how he's broken his bonds to protect people, and it's kind of like how can he fix that now? Um, and it very much had to be like the realization of not doing something like selfishly, but protecting people whether or not you like them or not. Um, and so I feel like Kaladin mentally kind of has that breakthrough at this point. And you had noted, Elliot, that like Kaladin finally understands why it's not okay to kill Elokar. And he thinks to his brother Tian, um, stuff like that. And so it was like kind of his big like personal breakthrough there. And then later we see that come to fruition with the reference of Syl coming back. But yeah, with that, and then this is all kind of happening. I'm assuming a little like right before the battle starts, kind of like breaking out. The Parshendi, like the I almost said stormtroopers, the stormformed Parshendi. Um,
Just call them that from now on. I'm on
yeah,
board
the
with that.
stormtroopers there. They start shooting their red
I like it.
lightning blasts. Super intense. And stuff. Everyone's very like worried at this point, and yeah, stuff kind of starts progressing there. It's like right on the cusp of battle. I almost think of like the Helm's Deep scene with the Orikar like stomping their weapons and stuff and making tons of noise. Like the battle's like about to begin. There's just a ton of things going on. Um, then it kind of goes crazy.
It does indeed. the battle launches. It gets pretty epic. I I did want to say one thing on the whole TN part of it before we jump into the battle for sure. I did like that moment where Kaladin finally does kind of put two and two together and realize that the way he's treating Elokar in his mind is the same way that the squad that Tien got assigned to treated him. That whole heart wrenching scene where Kaladin tries to save Tien, he can't, and he watches them sacrifice Tien because he's the weakest of the group in order to save themselves.
Right.
And Kaladin realizes, oh, dang it, that's what I'm doing to Elokar. I'm looking at Elokar and saying, you're a terrible king, and just using that to justify removing him from office so that we can put a better king in place. And it hits him there in that moment as the rain's pouring down on him that that's not okay.
Yeah.
For sure. And what I really love going on in this chapter, so normally I'm like really gripped into a particular storyline or subject that I don't like all the switching around. I'm like, come on, let's go back. I want to see what's happening with a specific one. Here, it was really great because everything was ramping up. So we have Kaladin, who honestly at this point kind of the least exciting one. He's kind of having his like emotional, like personal realization, like an epiphany moment.
Yeah.
And then there's Adolin and Dalinar and all of the High Princes like gearing up like at the edge of a battle right now. That's about to go like full force. And we also have like Shallan a little bit, that she's gonna try to find the portal to Urithiru and all that stuff there, and everything is kind of ramping up. I'm curious for Elliot, like with all these things kind of being put in motion at this point, do you remember which you were most like intrigued by or what you were most excited or the one you really wanted to see come into fruition first? They were kind of all moving together, so it was just really intense all around. But just what were your thoughts on each of them? Like, what were your favorites?
I That's a really good question through this last section here. And I think the first time that I read through, I was just so caught up in the excitement of it all that it was just like every page I didn't care who was on the next page. I just wanted to know what was going to happen next. And right, we're bouncing back and forth between Adolin, Dalinar, Shallan, Kaladin, and in every single storyline I wanted to know what was next and who was going to do what next. And so I don't know that there was any one particular that I was mostly caught up in the first time around. Second time around, as I was going a little slower and taking my notes, I think the Dalinar storyline, this gets into the ones we'll talk about next week. Dalinar's storyline, I think, is the most intriguing to me here. The Kaladin one is great. Kaladin storyline just in general is awesome. But the Dalinar one here really got me interested the second time around when I was looking closer. So I'm excited to talk about those next week.
For sure, it is very fair right here. I didn't have a super standout either. Most of the time when we're reading, it feels like one of our storylines is lagging behind in excitement a little bit. Like either Shallan has a lot of crazy stuff going on and Kaladin's is slower, or vice versa. But here, all three of them are just at like the top of a mountain, like about to tip over the edge, like crazy stuff going on. So you're just kind of on the edge of your seat the entire time, which was super exciting and awesome.
I might skip a little bit here, but I do want to push to Kaladin making the decision to go and help Elokar and the state that he finds Elokar in. So Kaladin walks in on Elokar, and Elokar is pretty far gone drunk. He's able to wake him up. He's not completely passed out like Dalinar would have or Dalinar was the night Gavilar died, but he's pretty far out there, and Kaladin's doing his best to carry him through these corridors to get him away from the assassins that he knows is coming. Also, side note, Kaladin takes down 2 bodyguards in his state, like without Stormlight. He kind of just takes them both down like in 2 seconds, and
Yeah, he's not even supposed to be walking.
yeah,
He still take down 2 armed guards.
yeah, and then he drags Elokar, I don't know, a couple hundred yards through the palace out to the back door where Zeth came in. But I just wanted to highlight the mental state that Elokar is in. Elokar is not in a good spot right now. He's been told by Kaladin, who Elokar kind of secretly looks up to, that you're a bad king. And that has confirmed all of Elokar's like worst nightmares. He's always been afraid that he is the bad Kholin, you know? Like his sister Yasna is this super renowned scholar. His mother is this super renowned engineer. His father was the great King Gavilar who united Alethkar. And, you know, his uncle, his cousin Adolin is the fine duelist. Like, everybody has their title, and Elokar is told by Kaladin, you're a bad king. And so Elokar is not in a good spot here. I feel bad for him.
Yeah, not to mention, so at this point, whenever he's being carried, right, one of the guards actually gets up and stabs him, right? Like, the guard isn't quite out, stabs him in the side. So on top of him being very drunk, he gets stabbed in the side. So it's just not his best night. But Kaladin is full on in protection mode here, and he stays with Elokar, is trying to find help. This is very much Kaladin's character, so we see him in a lot of situations throughout the story that it's like he can't do anything here, but like man, is he gonna try still?
Right.
He doesn't have Stormlight, he doesn't have any way to get the scout here, he's limping himself, like it's just a whole mess. And then he runs into
Moash and Graves.
Yeah, he runs into the actual assassins who are coming to kill him, and it's just a whole mess.
And that brings me to my favorite moment from this set of chapters here. And just like you described there, Paul, Kaladin is at the end of his capabilities. He's injured himself more trying to drag Elokar out of here and save him. He's bleeding. Elokar's bleeding. They're both about to bleed out and die. Graves and Moash show up. But here's what Kaladin says, and I want to read it. And I'm gonna edit it slightly because it's actually a dialogue between Kaladin and Elokar, but Elokar's just responding like, huh? What? Like in between the different Kaladin lines. So I'm just gonna read the Kaladin lines. Fleet kept running. He couldn't win, but he kept running. And when the storm caught him, it didn't matter that he'd died, because he'd run for all he had. We all die in the end, you see. So I guess what truly matters is just how well you've run. And that is, 1, awesome, and 2, such a cool example of living out the whole journey before destination mantra that Kaladin has adopted as a Knights Radiant, of saying, getting there, giving my all, keep on pushing, even when I think I'm gonna fail. That is what is most important, not whether you actually succeed in getting where you were going. If Kaladin had failed to save Elokar here, he still would have done everything possible he could have, and it would have been the right thing. It would have been the right thing to do, even if he didn't save him. I love this passage. I think that this might be my favorite passage right here of all of Words of Radiance.
Yeah. There's some in the next, I believe it's the next chapter after that Kaladin has made this decision. He's dragging Elhokar through the tunnels here, and Graves and Moash show up. There's some very good dialogue between Moash and Kaladin here. Moash is so convinced that he's justified here, and Kaladin is trying everything he can to convince Moash otherwise. That, like, Kaladin is telling him, I've been where you're at. Like, I totally understand why you feel what you're feeling, but it's wrong. And here's my my second favorite quote from Words of Radiance. It's some dialogue between Moash and Kaladin. My favorite comes next week in the 2 chapters later, but this is my second favorite one. You'd attack me, Kaladin said. Your captain, your friend. Don't turn this around on me. Why not? Which is more important to you, me or petty vengeance? He murdered them, Kaladin, Moash snapped. That sorry excuse for a king killed the only family I ever had. I know. Then why are you protecting him? It wasn't his fault. That's a load of... It wasn't his fault, Kaladin said, but I'd be here even if it had been, Moash. We have to be better than this, you and I. I can't explain it, not perfectly. You have to trust me. Back down. The king hasn't yet seen you or Graves. We'll go to Dalinar, and I'll see that you get justice against the right man, Rashon, the one truly behind your grandparents' deaths. But Moash, we're not going to be this kind of men. Murders in dark corridors, killing a drunk man because we find him distasteful, telling ourselves it's for the good of the kingdom. If I kill a man, I'm going to do it in the sunlight, and I'm going to do it only because there is no other way. Sorry, Cal. It's too late. You won't have him. I won't back down. I guess I wouldn't want you to. There's a lot of parallels in Moash and Kaladin's like backstories of how they feel their family was wronged, and they're trying to get like revenge against the Light Eyes, and they have this common understanding of Light Eyes are terrible. They kick Dark Eyes whenever they can, and we're gonna rise up and be better than they are. But right here, Moash and Kaladin disagree and go separate ways in their thought process.
Ironically, in both of those parallel storylines, they both end up becoming Light Eyes.
They do.
So hopefully we'll have some of the first Light Eyes to... They're definitely not the first Light Eyes to be good, because we know that they're good Light Eyes like Dalinar and such, but it is kind of ironic that they became the thing that they really hated, not in a bad way, but like the physical, like having light eyes. They've always loathed people with light eyes, and now I guess they can loathe themselves. So Kaladin already has been doing that from what we've seen. I don't know about Moash, but
I'm curious to see where that's going to go, because now we have 2 examples of Dark Eyes that have become Light Eyes, and we've gotten a few hints that this is going to become more and more common, of people that are going to discover their surge binding abilities that will potentially, if they go far enough, sounds like become Light Eyes. So how is this going to change that cultural structure of Light Eyes and Dark Eyes? Are they going to view it the same or different? I wonder if that's going to be explored a little more as we keep going.
Right now it's just a social structure, but we're beginning to like connect the dots of, oh, that's probably because back in the day, Knight's Radiance, like if you ascended to, in Kaladin's case, his third ideal, he became a Light Eyes. So that's probably where that comes from, is if you're a Light Eyes, then that means you have your Shard Blade. If you're a Knight's Radiant. back over to the battle for a bit?
Let's do it.
Before we talk about Syl coming back here in a bit. So Adolin has a very interesting kind of side story with Eshonai here. He cuts his way into this hill because he figures it's hollow, from what he's understood, from what Shallan's doing, and he begins to cut through the backside of these Parshendi lines into the choir singers that are kind of behind the soldiers, and they're in this trance, and Adolin finds himself like slaughtering so many Parshendi that are singing. And something that's, Elliot, you put in the outline here that's interesting to pick up, the thrill doesn't come to him like has been referred to back in the Way of Kings. Is usually when Parshendi fight Alethi, the Alethi pull on this thing called the thrill, and it gives them like this taste for battle, this lust for battle, and it lets them push through and do what needs to be done as they validate themselves here. But Adolin doesn't have it. But he notices that Eshonai does when he's fighting Eshonai. Any ideas here? What's happening here?
I was hoping that Paul would have some thoughts on this too, but I did note this, and I'm not sure what's going on here. We had some sort of references to the thrill in the Teravangian chapter we got recently. We learned that maybe it's somehow tied to Spren, or maybe this one specific Spren. Not really sure exactly what it is, but they talk about how it's like moving, that the thrill's being felt in other areas now or something like that. So that made me all kind of think that, oh, okay, whatever's caused moved away from the Shattered Plains and is somewhere else. So that would explain why Adolin's not feeling it. But that definitely would not explain why Eshonai still is. So I'm confused. I'm definitely confused about the origin of the thrill and what's going on there. Paul, did you have any guesses there?
So I'm thinking of other times that we've seen this. Like the biggest thing is we've seen with Dalinar how he used to have this thrill, and that was the Blackthorn, right? He could just go through battle nonstop. And we've, as much as I can remember, I think he's the only one that I remember struggling with that. And I took it as a like he's getting older and wiser, and sees like and just has a desire for not like senseless killing, but like some solution to be found aside from that. And I almost just thought about it of Adolin kind of growing up a little, or like just having a different view of it. I didn't think of it as like an external force entirely. Because I mean it talks about how right he's killing these Parshendi, and they're not fighting back. They just kind of come out of their trance right before they, like as he approaches, right before they die, and then moves on and stuff. So yeah, I kind of just thought of this as like a normal thing, like you would feel like it's one thing whenever you're fighting for your life, and there's one thing where you're just like running through a group of people, killing them and stuff. And I kind of just equated it to that, not as like an external like Spren thing or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to think.
I am, but my opinion doesn't matter.
I agree.
Adolin tricks Eshonai and kind of shoulder checks her into the chasm, gets saved by a couple bridgemen. Predictions: is Eshonai dead?
No. It didn't show her really die, so
She didn't die on
Yeah.
camera, so she's still alive.
yes, exactly. She fell like oops, she fell. She's wearing shard plate, right? She's fine. She's in storm form. I'm surprised she didn't just jump back out of the chasm or something.
Yeah, I was too.
Yeah. They just jump right back, and Adelin's like, "Oh, oops. I hope that didn't make you mad." Yeah. There's no way Eshonai's dead casually. Like, well, if she died, honestly, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I don't think. But I don't think that she would just fall and that's the end of it. There's gonna be like a on camera death. So
I too was fully expecting her to come right back out of that chasm. She's in storm form and she's wearing shard plate. Like, there's a lot of reasons why she could have survived that. I'm I'm fully expecting her to still be alive. And two, if you just look at the numbers, if you just look at the number of people, since we're spoilers to the end of the book here, the number of people who are supposed to be dead and are not, there's a lot of reason to believe that Eshonai is not going to be dead here.
I wonder if we could count them all without forgetting anybody.
I have that in my notes for the next one. Don't worry.
yeah. Perfect.
But even if she did survive the fall, there's an Everstorm and a High Storm on top of her, like within the hour. Do you think she survived that?
She is like a high storm, right? I don't know. She's storm form. It's her playground. I don't know. She'll be fine.
We've seen her walk into a high storm and walk out just
that's
fine.
true. Yeah, I guess
Trevor's
that's true.
Trying to stir a pot and
yeah, nice try.
Nice try. Yeah,
I did try.
Granted, this is a new level, right? I mean, Everstorm, it seems to be more powerful than what we've seen before. In the Zeth and Kaladin scene, it's throwing plateaus up into the air. Like, this is a new level of force, but there's no way Eshonai's dead. No way.
Gotcha. All right, we haven't mentioned Shallan yet. She's off on her own little escapade trying to find the Oath Gate. And she's mapping out the Shattered Plains, what episode or chapter 81 maybe. And one of the scouts says, "Oh, you drew this one wrong. That it's not shaped that way." And Shallan turns back to him and says, "What do you mean? Like, I know what I'm doing. It's definitely shaped that way." And he said, "No, it's a circle instead of an oval." And then she said, "Well, that would mean it's different than what it's on the other side. Like, what's the mirror image?" And then it dawns on her, "Oh, that's my cue. We're going over there to see what's different about it." And there's this dome in the middle of this tall, perfectly round plateau here, and in the middle of it is this shard, like, Oath Gate room, which I don't know. I don't think does she open it in 84?
Not yet.
They try. They at least are trying.
I mean the room. I don't mean the gate itself, but I mean, like, do they explore the room in 84?
They do get into the room, because they get into the room. She finds the keyhole and she tries Renarin's blade in the keyhole and it doesn't work.
Right.
And I think that's as far as they get in 84.
Gotcha. The room here is really cool. Like, is really well presented, described, I guess you could say, that it's like a circle and it has 10 spokes to this wheel, more like 11, because there's this little tiny one for Urithiru, which is like a tower, and then 10 kingdoms and different Oath Gates, and you kind of just spin it to whichever one you want to go to, and poof. So,
yep, easy as that. Poof.
Little sci-fi in our fantasy realm here. What are you guys' thoughts on Oath Gates? We can spoil the next couple chapters and talk about Oath Gates real quick.
They're fine.
Okay. Were you excited to see Urithiru, or did you not care?
I was definitely excited. I thought it was really cool, like the little keyhole itself, like fitting a shard blade, and then it was made out of shard material. I'm very confused with that, but also like
Same.
I just didn't question it too much. I was like, "Ooh, like okay."
Does that mean
Exciting.
the Oath
Very
Gate is a
excited.
spren because shard blades are spren?
He was.
Yeah, the Oathgate is interesting. I too wonder, is the thing a spren? Because we learn, or we're about to learn, that shard blades are spren. So is this keyhole made of shard blade metal also have to be a spren? Like, how does that work? That seems to follow the logic there. Not really sure. I gotta admit, I was expecting, like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Stargate or any of the iterations of that, and this big like vertical circle portal that everyone goes through. That's kind of what I was envisioning in my mind. And so for this to be just like this horizontal platform that you turn the key and everything on the platform goes is a little different and kind of cool. I like it. Definitely a little sci-fi there. I do definitely have questions of like what exactly goes with you. The clothes you're wearing apparently go. If you're holding, a goat, is the goat going to go with you?
Right.
All of that. What goes and what doesn't. If you're holding a rock, does the rock go? I, but that's probably just me thinking a little too hard about it. I thought it was cool. I thought it was good.
If you're halfway on the plateau, does half of you go and you just
Yeah,
die?
exactly.
Like
If you don't have enough Stormlight, do you not go, or does some of you go? Not sure.
great questions.
The important questions only.
Right.
Um,
Jumping back towards Kaladin, Moash and Kaladin have this grand, intense, epic fight. No, I'm just kidding. Moash just punches Kaladin in the stomach, and that's that. And all of Kaladin's like ribs break, and Moash says, "Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to hit you that hard. I just meant to knock you over." Because Kaladin can barely stand up as is. And as Graves is trying to convince Moash to kill Kaladin, because Graves thinks he's gonna turn them in, because Moash isn't really willing to admit this at this point, but Graves sees that Kaladin is 100% going to turn them in. Like if they kill Elokar and leave him alive, he will talk to Dalinar about it. So as Graves is trying to convince Moash to kill Kaladin, Syl comes back. Do you guys want to talk about Syl returning and Kaladin's third ideal of I will protect. Wait, hold on. Okay.
Want me to read it for you?
Yeah. Okay. Side note.
Fake fan.
No. It's really okay. It's really really hard to talk about the right ideal at the right time, because it's so easy to like just like accidentally just spoil something. Like, oops, that definitely wasn't the fourth ideal, something like that. So I gotta be really careful whenever I talk about ideals, because they're very similar to each other. Anyway,
so is the next one I will protect, is that like did you spoil that for us?
Elliot, can you read it for me?
I can. So what he says here is, I will protect even those I hate, so long as it is right.
Thank you.
Which I thought was really good.
Yeah.
That is a good one.
And the whole scene of like Syl cheering him on is so good. Like her voice just appears, he hears her voice and you just get really excited, like, oh, Syl, she's back. And she's just, kind of trying to say the words, say the words, say the words, say the words. And he gets it and she appears and she's a shard blade. It's like, yes.
Yeah. Elliot, I saw that you tagged yourself for Words of Radiance spoilers in the Discord earlier today, and
Yes.
there was great discussion in our Discord probably about a month ago now. Maybe even more than that. And there's a scene in the Chasms where Shallan lends Kaladin her shard blade, and Kaladin turns to the sword and notices that it looks different than a lot of shard blades. And Kaladin mentions to himself that he sees a pattern running up and down the shard blade. And you got half of that. You said this in the podcast, but you didn't put two and two together that it could be pattern
Nope.
as the shard blade. So we were laughing at you in the Discord, in the spoiler Discord, to ourselves, that you were so close that you said on the podcast that he notices it's different and he notices there's something weird about it, and then you just go on to something else, and we were enjoying that you didn't quite put that together.
Yes, shout out to all you guys in the Discord channel, especially in our Words of Radiance spoiler channel. Looks like you guys have had a whole bunch of fun conversations in there. I was really excited today when I opened that for the first time, and I'll have to maybe spend a couple hours scrolling back through that. If you're not on our Discord channel, you should come check it out. We've got some really fun stuff in there. So that was fun.
In that same, actually, it's the next chapter. Shallan is carving out the cubby for Kaladin and Shallan to sit in, and her shard blade changes shape to a knife so that she can carve out the thing easier. And neither of you mentioned that. We had never seen a shard blade do that before, and neither of you mentioned that at the time, so I didn't. I wasn't going to bring it up, but Shallan's shard blade was definitely acting differently earlier in this book, and you guys didn't seem to catch it, but it's obvious to us after Spren reveals that in the next part. But we were enjoying it.
I do kind of remember that now. Yeah, I don't know why it didn't stick out to me more. I just kind of took it as, oh, like shard blades will be shard blades, like they just kind of do their own thing. But yeah, like, I'm not gonna get too much into it, but we see later with Kaladin and Syl that Syl will take any form of a weapon that he needs at the time and stuff. She makes a remark like, "Oh, like you would probably prefer if I was a spear, wouldn't you? Like that's what you're used to," and stuff, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I guess, yeah.
I did actually write in my notes about the Shallan shard blade changing. I did notice that, but like you, Paul, I kind of just chalked that off as oh, okay, that's a cool new capability of shard blades we didn't know about before, and didn't honestly think too much about it. I was gonna bring it up in our episode, and we ended up talking about a bunch of other stuff and just didn't have time, and I didn't think it was that important. But yeah, looking back on that, I see now how important that aspect of her shard blade was.
There's a funny meme in the Stormlight archive Twitter where in this scene, and Syl's coming back and she says, stretch forth thy hand, your will matters not, talking to the Stormfather, where Syl's just suddenly become like old English, like speaking for some reason. Syl's very casual and talks very innocently, but suddenly out of the blue she's like, stretch forth thy hand, your will matters. Like she's speaking as if this was written in the 14th century or something like that. And
Actually,
there's this meme, I don't know if I can find it, but it's Syl just comes back with like a top hat and a cane and like a mustache, and she's just like completely different than she was before. Did you guys catch this weird dialogue that Syl has coming back? Or because on my read it sounded like natural to me, but apparently a lot of people make fun of what Syl's saying here.
it seemed fairly natural just because it was like it was more of like a triumphant entrance rather than just like a, oh hey, like by the way, stick your hand out, like
Right.
Yeah, it was just kind of like an emotional, like, like if it were in the movie, it would be where the music is like super ramped up, like, emotional moment. Stretch forth thy hand. Like, it is pretty funny, and like honestly thinking about it, a little cheesy, but like, yeah, it kind of sort of makes sense. I didn't really like think twice about it, at least.
Yeah. I will say Words of Radiance would make a better movie than The Way of Kings.
I agree. I think it would be good.
We can talk more about that in our Words of Radiance recap episode that we'll have, but just from a logistics standpoint, The Way of Kings would not make a very good movie, in my opinion, and I think Words of Radiance really would make a good movie, especially if, like Shallan being the main character, you stick with her for the first half hour, go through, her caravan stuff, meet a bunch of new characters, and then have a epic battle at the end. It just has more thematic elements of a movie. Any more thoughts on 81 through 84 before we talk about the true ending of the book next week?
Only Stormlight.
The only thing I want to mention, and there's not much to actually talk about, it's really just a name drop almost. Graves, at the end of chapter 84, mentions the diagram. Just kind of offhand. But that, lit up a light bulb for me immediately. It's like, whoa, wait a second. Graves is tied to Taravangian somehow? Is he an agent of Taravangian? And we get a couple more hints toward this in the next set of chapters, so we can mention it maybe again, but we don't get a ton of answers necessarily about who Graves is exactly. So I'm now intrigued. Earlier, I honestly didn't really care too much about who Graves was. I just figured he was, out for himself kind of guy, but he might be a little more important than I thought he was.
I will mention that as we close this episode out, that the diagram was trying to split Kaladin and Dalinar so that Szeth wouldn't run into Kaladin on the Shattered Plains, and Graves was a part of that. So as Kaladin is swearing his third ideal, Graves is kind of rambling to himself of, wait, the diagram didn't mention about anything about that you would ascend. It was just focused on keeping you away from Dalinar, and that's all we really hear of him as he's running away, screaming or whatever's happening. So yes, there is an interesting Taravangian twist to this chapter. All right.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Sounds good. With that, we will conclude this portion of closing out Words of Radiance. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Eliot, and we will continue talking about the end of the book next week.
See ya.
Can't wait.